Well, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do a thing if we must. I'm surly. Nate and I were talking before the show. The show was not great. It
It
didn't
existed.
go home show. It definitely existed. There's no denying that. Um, it it existed as it was a go home show that did not feature the people who would be in the PLE all that much, which is, I get it. They've done this in NXT before, where everybody's struggling to get TV time, and so there's that. So you got to have people on like Kale Dixon, like Uriah Connors, like Nikita Lyons, because you have to apparently, and not cut one of those people instead. I'm off the rails, Nate, already in record time. I'm off the rails.
We've only been live for a minute and 30 seconds.
But Vengeance Day is in 3 days, and who would even know that by watching this episode? I don't know which of us is going to cover it because neither of us is actually available on Saturday night. But Nate, there was a positive. There was a positive tonight, and there is a thing to start the show with because the matches, other than the first one, which I liked, weren't that. Ricky Starks.
Ricky Starks.
We knew that he was probably going to show up in this company, but he did. He did tonight. It was much faster than we thought. We know they like him because they did a segment that was only about 2 minutes long, if that. And then after one other segment, they replayed the Ricky Starks segment. Of note, they didn't call him Ricky Starks. They didn't call him anything. They just said, you know who that is. They said that a couple of times. So I think that is because they don't know whether they're going to call him Ricky Starks. They might do so. I think that he has just enough name cachet that they could do so. But if they want to call him something else, they could do that too. But Ricky's still out there doing the same thing. I've been watching him since NWA, because I was covering that when there was when it was worth watching for a while. But Ricky Starks was one of the centerpieces of it at that time. So, yeah, looking still like that character, looking like he's maybe found his home, but we'll see. I went big picture talking about him on the recap, saying that I think he can be a big deal in NXT and a long-term mid-card player on the main roster. And if everything breaks totally right, maybe he'll visit that main event scene. I like Ricky a lot. And he was fairly accessible during my time in NWA. A couple Twitter exchanges. He's probably too big a deal for that to happen now, but it did happen at the time. But Ricky Starks showed up near the end of the show, fashionably late, and just announced that he was around. So, yeah, I don't know if they'll call him that. Ryan Solorio in the chat says not calling him Ricky Starks is worrying. I don't know. If the new name is good, then I don't care. In a vacuum, I'll just tell you right now, I hope they keep the name. I think Ricky Starks is a good name. But if they don't, I won't care as long as the new name is good. Brock Benningfield says Starkey Ricks. Yes, in the Daniel Bryan.
Yep.
Oh boy, that's
Starkey Ricks. Starkey Ricks.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan's annoying because it made both names feel wrong after a certain amount of time, and to the point where I still say it aloud, and I'm like, is that it? So let's hope it's not that. But at any rate, Ricky Starks is here. I've watched him a lot. I saw NWA build around him when they thought that they were going to be able to build, and then COVID happened, and all their guys' contracts ran out, and they all went to greener pastures. But Nate, tell me what you think about Ricky Starks, if indeed you do think about the man.
I mean, I don't think about him super often, but you know, there are a lot of wrestlers out in the world and so little time. No, this is a big surprise. I mean, you know, obviously on the independent circuit out of AEW for a little bit now, you know, and it was like Kelly said, we kind of had a feeling we'd probably wind up seeing him in NXT, or sorry, WWE before long, but I think it was a matter of, is it going to be WWE? Is it going to be NXT? Obviously, we got that answer tonight, showing up here in NXT. I'm totally for it. I mean, he certainly had the kind of that star power showing up in the crowd. The crowd knew who he was chanting his name. Like you said, you know, he didn't actually acknowledge the fact that his name is Ricky Starks or anything. I didn't even think about it until you said it. I'm wondering if maybe it's like a legal thing, you know, maybe, or maybe they just, maybe it wasn't even a thing. Maybe it was just he was going to come out and say, my name is Ricky Starks. And then everybody started chanting his name. And he was like, well, you already know who I am. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're reading a little too much into it. But yeah, there could certainly be something, you know, with like legalities of his name or something along those lines. You know, who owns the rights to it or whatnot. And maybe they got to figure that out, navigate those waters or whatever. But regardless, the man is here in NXT. I think, like Kelly said, you know, he's got that, not only that name value of star power, but I mean, I could certainly see him, you know, having a pretty good run here. You know, like Kelly said, also, you know, kind of that maybe dancing in the main event scene, even on the main roster, before long, you know, if everything goes his way. If not, I could see him kind of being an upper mid card guy that does kind of, you know, maybe toe the line with the main event scene every once in a while. You know, maybe he doesn't ever like win the big one, but you know, he's somebody almost like a little bit of a gatekeeper type of a role before you get before you get to the champion. But I'm all for it. I'm totally all for it. I'm glad to see him here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does here in NXT.
So yeah, we talk about him. Maybe he'll come up more. If it happens in the chat, we'll bring him up. But it really was a very brief appearance. They spent some time on him because they showed the appearance twice, but it was a brief appearance. I think that he'll be in NXT at least for a minute. They're not heavy in the men's main event scene right now, especially on the babyface side of things. And it seems like he showed up babyface, but this is a guy who is cool enough that when he shows up, it's going to be a babyface reaction. And then we see what happens after that. But yeah, they could use some babyfaces because the main event babyface tonight was Tony D'Angelo, and that's just not going to cut it. I told Nate I was going to be a little negative tonight, and I'm going to try not to be too bad, but your main event was Tony D'Angelo versus Rich Holland, and I never thought I'd say that sentence. I didn't think I'd ever say those words in that order, and they were in a cage because why not? Tony D'Angelo versus Ridge Holland in a cage. A cage can't hide the fact that these are both guys who slow things down and go to chin locks. One in a match is great. Two in a match is a little bit whatever. So yeah, it was a long way to get to a storyline. D'Angelo beats Holland, which minor surprise to me. I probably wouldn't be if I could just be normal about Tony D, but he bores me so much that I just think they got to be able to see that they should move on to the next thing. Character, fine. It's in ring. We've talked about that plenty. I don't have to beat that dead horse. But Ridge takes another loss in a championship environment. Izzy Dame shows up, and I don't know. Are we surprised or not that she used the crowbar against Tony D? I don't know.
Shocked, I tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether I'm shocked or not because I had given it no thought. But she is hanging out with Sean Spears and Brooks Jensen and Nico Vance, and I can't help but think that this would have more weight if those guys were doing anything on the main roster other than lurking. They're not doing much else. Izzy, for what it is worth, I never remembered what she looks like. Now I remember what she looks like. She looks like she has some purpose, some fire, something. And I didn't think she was going to get there. So cool that she did. In a very, very quiet way, I think she's one of the stars of this final scene because this scene was not packed with stars. But Tony D, still your North American champion after this cage match with Ridge Holland, 11 minutes and 9 seconds. This is your second longest match of the night on a night with 3 fairly long form matches. And it was literally exactly what I would expect from Tony D and Ridge. Neat, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this was our main event. It happened. I also was somebody I don't think I necessarily would have heard the phrase or heard the sentence Tony D'Angelo, Ridge Holland main event cage match. But here we are. I don't know. Kelly and I were talking about this before we went on the air. And they're just two guys that are largely vanilla, and I don't know. They just don't have a lot of flair right now, or ever, I guess. Really, Tony D. Obviously, that flair comes in with his character. But I mean, my personal feelings, I like the character and the mafioso gimmick, but I don't think it's necessarily everybody's cup of tea. I know it's not certainly Kelly's. And yeah, I think it can kind of get a little bit stale, a little bit bland and boring for some people. So you've got that coupled with Ridge Holland, who, while he's perfectly fine, and what he's doing as of late as a heel has been good. Um, I don't know who's necessarily clamoring to see Ridge Holland. I mean, when he's not on my screen, I'm not necessarily thinking about him. I don't know. I think the match itself was okay. It's more or less what I expected it to be. I wasn't quite sure what the finish was going to be, but the rest of the match, sure, especially with interference from coming from the family, Stacks introducing the crowbar and all of that. I kind of had a feeling was going to happen, even though they're the faces, kind of doing some heel things to try and keep the championship. But then obviously, after the fact that crowbar was there really for that angle after the match, Izzy Dame using the crowbar against Tony D'Angelo, kind of turning on her friend, I guess, acquaintance, business associate. I'm going to call it business associate. Turned on her business associate, and is now with Gasp, Sean Spears and company. Sean Spears, Brooks Jensen, and the other guy, because I can't remember his name. I know it's somewhere in the back of my head. I've been trying to think of it for a minute or two.
Nico Vance. And
Nico Vance.
Far, the next time that I type his name in a recap without having to look it up will be the first.
Okay.
It's this faction. I mean, they exist, I guess, but to put this faction in there in the main event slot was very surprising to me.
Indeed. Because I mean, it still feels mid card. They haven't really done anything of note.
Mid card would be an upgrade from what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just around. I'm baffled that this was what they ended the show with, but maybe they wanted to put it in the main event slot to suggest that that something big is going to come of this. But But what's the total number of wins that faction has had on this show? I don't know. I think if you put them all together, you're probably somewhere around 15. And I am counting Ty's first run where he lost most of his matches. People don't remember that, but he lost most of the time in NXT
Oh
too.
yeah, as Ty Dillinger, absolutely.
Oh yeah, and I'm counting the Jensen tag matches. It's not a lot.
Yeah, but not only all of that, coming kind of back to Ridge Holland too. I mean, they've been trying to push him as this big heel, somebody that you can't beat, and um, uh, when has he won a big match? He hasn't. Every time the match means something, he's staring at the lights, and obviously, yeah, after the match, sure, he got a little bit of his heat back by by attacking everybody before Sean Spears and company, came out and finished the job. But still, I mean, on paper, Rich Holland loses every time it matters. Why do we necessarily? Why, as fans, why should we necessarily care or think he's a threat? Um, I don't know. Just throwing that out there too.
Ryan Solorio in the chat says, "I remember him as a tag team with Jason Jordan." LOL.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Good for you. He because most people do not like. Props that you remember this. Ty and Jason Jordan were a tag team where it was just like these guys can do stuff, and the stuff they decided to have them do was lose, because they were there at the same time as the Ascension, which were pushed to oblivion for reasons only they. If you ever get the chance, if you watch NXT from then, watch the Ascension run, because maybe you have positive memories of it, but it was so lame. It was so bad. The matches were bad, and the mic time was way worse. So look at that. So yeah, Jason Jordan, they moved him around, and he was finally doing some good stuff, and he got injured, but it seems like he will still be in the company for the foreseeable future because people really like him as a producer. So again, off the rails, but tag teams, they'll do that. Since I'm talking tag teams and since I'm surly, that is a double segue. Hank and Tank versus Briggs and Inamura versus Heights and Bourne. 12:09. This was the longest match of the night. I hated it. This match was nothing but spots. No flow to this. No team was in control for more than a few seconds at a time. Every single move was done well. So much of this was done well. The one, I'm going to Jekyll and Hyde you here. I really liked Inamura in this match. Yoshiki Inamura. Shocker. I like the guy who came in and did some Japanese strong style, but he showed out so early on that Book just couldn't even hold it in. He was like, I'm loving this guy. Yes, this was, if there's anything to take away from this match, I think it's just Yoshiki Inamura is real cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
So for the most part, I found this extremely tiresome. Not just because I was recapping it, and recapping these matches is hard, but because there was nothing to get into. It was just stuff happening. But Inamura was the star of the match. Briggs secondary, and everybody else was just kind of doing stuff. I thought that this was an official number one contenders match, but this was. Apparently, I was just supposed to connect the dots, which I did. So Briggs and Inamura are going to have their first match on APLE, and they are going to challenge Axiom and Fraser, who were watching from the perch, and said the good news, you wanted a match with us. The bad news is you got it. I know that's a line that's out there, but it's a good line. Axiom Fraser. Are they heels? Are they not? They play with that every now and then. I'm not sure, But Inamura, this was his match. So as much as I hated the match, I loved him in it. So Azan White says another notch on Fraxium belt. Probably, but because these guys win all the time, I think when they finally lose, it is going to take us by surprise. So I'm not sure. And then Azan adds, are they saving Fraxium for the Hardys here? That would be, I don't think the Hardys will beat them for the championships. If they show up, they'll maybe win by disqualification. That's not a thing that's done very often, but they might do something like that, just DQ or even more likely count out. But I would be surprised if this was going to be a Hardys run, unless they wanted to be able to say the Hardys were also NXT champions, in addition to being both WWE champions and TNA champions and AEW champions, and everything like that. So there you go. Tag teams. We like tag teams, but we wouldn't mind if they slowed down, Nate, or at least I certainly wouldn't.
A little bit. Now, as far as the Hardys go, I've been thinking about this for a little while, that we may see the Hardys challenge Fraxium, or if not challenge them for the tag team titles, maybe they do a champion versus champion type of a match just to see who's better. Maybe it's not for the titles, but it's just for bragging rights or something like that. What I would like to see, though, is the Hardys actually be the ones to defeat Fraxium for the titles, and then it okay, so eventually somebody from TNA needs to win a WWE title. This partnership with TNA and WWE is supposed to be a multi-year thing. It's going to happen eventually. Like it's inevitable, unless they just never do it, and I'd be very surprised. What better tag team? I would like. I guess you'd think of a couple guys that you'd want to have that. I guess that honor of being the very first from outside the company to hold WWE gold, and it be the Hardy Boys, who's has a very long history in WWE. I think it'd be a good pop for the crowd. I think it'd be some. All right, I accidentally refreshed my browser, so let me try that again. I think it'd be some great eyes on TNA, if if the Hardys were the ones to do that. You get a lot of people talking in the industry, and it'd be I don't know, just think it'd be really really kind of cool. Low chances of it happening, but I think it would be cool to see Fraxium versus the Hardys in any setting, whether it's for the titles or not. Um, as far as this match went with Hank and Tank, Josh Briggs and Inamura, Tavion Heights, Miles Bourne, I'm kind of with Kelly. I mean, the match itself was meh, just a lot of high spots for high spots' sake. It wasn't that it wasn't entertaining in some points. It certainly was. I certainly love watching Hank and Tank. Tank especially. He's unique, and I think there's something there with him once he kind of refines his act a little bit more.
He Tank can be something, but if that thing is just Otis, then he's got to find his way to be something other than Otis,
Yeah,
because I think that is the one thing that could hold him back.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. 'Cause I mean, it's very Oda. Even just the tag team in general reminds me a lot of Heavy Machinery. So there's a
Heavy Machinery is literally, we just did their first match on the last episode of NXT 8 years back. So if you're
yeah,
wondering when Heavy Machinery happened, it was 8 years ago this week, folks.
good God, I feel old.
That is when that started. Oh God. And if
Yeah,
you feel old, then I feel worse, because I've got a number of years on you.
yes, you do.
Brock Benningfield points out that Tank lives in a van down by the river. Thank you,
You're going to
Brock,
be eating a
for
steady diet of government cheese.
thank you, Brock, for being my age, or at least being enough of an SNL devotee to act like you were for a second. Okay, so there was that. stuff happened. That is what that match was. Let's talk JDC versus Lexus King. Maybe I'll remember JDC. Maybe I'll just accidentally call him Fandango. This is for the Heritage Cup Championship. Both announcers that used to wrestle put over the new Heritage Cup rules being one fall to a finish, which go to hell. Just go to hell.
But they are
this
heels.
is they are kind of heels, sort of. But the only thing interesting about the Heritage Cup, and it was very interesting, I don't want to undercut that, is the different rules. So I hope this is just a Lexus King ruining a championship, and somebody will bring it back to being interesting. So they put over they brought up Noam Dar a few times. So
I was just going to say that.
I think that Noam Dar comes back, wins this championship, and brings the Heritage Cup back to what it was.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Noam is a dude that has been in this company or close to this company for quite a while, has spent his amount of time on the shelf, is very funny, and he's this, it seemed like he was going to get a run near the top. He was going to lose to Trick Williams, but he was going to have a run near the top, and then he got hurt, and so they had to call the audible with Ethan Page. But yes, this was Lexus King winning in 9:36. I think this will come to Noam Dar. I hope it comes to something, because it was just what it was. My takeaway from this is Fandango is still pretty good. He's doing the shtick that we're that we know, but it's still very good, and I'm still happy to see him in the ring. He looks timeless because he's been gone for a few years, doesn't look any older. Good for him. Well done, and I'm happy about that. So Azam White says one fall to a finish makes more sense than other rules. I mean, yes, that's how things are done, but that's the only thing interesting about the Heritage Cup. He also says Noam Dar, one of the guys from 205 Live, still around now. Yeah, you can even go before 205 Live. Go to the Cruiserweight Classic, the 32-man tournament, where most of the guys, a lot of those guys are still successful, but very few still on this roster. And of course, one, Cedric Alexander, was recently on the roster and no longer is anymore. Very few guys. I guess I'd have to look, but it's pretty thin as far as guys who were in the Cruiserweight Classic who are still around. So there you go. JDC Lexus King 9:36. Your fourth longest match at 9:36. I think that Lexus as a heel is doing some pretty okay things. It's really weird to look at a guy who looks a lot like Brian Pillman for a very good reason, and to see him being the guy who slows it down against a guy who wrestles like Brian Pillman. But that's what we got, and I can kind of live with it. I don't know that this guy will ever be a star, but God, they are committed to trying, Nate.
That they are. I mean, so I'm not going to lie. I did enjoy this match. I've always liked Fandango, especially in his comedic roles and things like that. So it's cool to see him come back, especially to NXT. But like Kelly said, he can go. He can still certainly go. And that, I think that was pretty evident tonight. He knows. I mean, God, he's been wrestling since I think it was 1999. I looked it up a little earlier. When Corey said he was trained by Killer Kowalski, I was like, he was trained in my area, so I had to, which was something I didn't know, and so I did a little bit of a little dive into Fandango while I was watching the show. But yeah, I mean, for his wrestling as long as he's been, he's God. He's still like he can still do whatever I don't know, he wants to do. I'm sure there's a few things he doesn't do anymore, but still, I I think, we're talking about the rules of the Heritage Cup changing. I'm with Kelly, with exactly what Kelly said. I think this is a setup to bring Noam Dar back. Lexus King's probably going to run under these rules for, another month or two, for a little while anyway. Maybe leading up to Stand and Deliver, where the Heritage Cup's only defended with, one fall, no rounds, and all of that, just standard match. And then Noam Dar comes back and he's like, no, that's my baby. And because if you recall, like how attached he was, remember when he first lost that, how distraught he was for losing the cup. So he comes back and he restores the Heritage Cup to what it should be. That's exactly where I think this is going. And if it's not, then you should change it, guys. Change it, WWE, because that's where it should go. That's the proper way of doing this, unless they have some sort of a better story to tell me. Were you going to say something?
Ryan Slorio shows up. Yes, I do so sometimes. I'm a specter. So Ryan Slorio mentions that of the Cruiserweight Classic, what we got left right now are Noam Dar and Akira Tozawa. These are
Tommaso Ciampa.
They were. Oh, okay. Right. Ciampa and Gargano faced off in the first round, so there's that. But he brought up Tozawa. But yeah, Tozawa and Dar both went to the round of 8, so we knew that they were people that they liked. Tozawa was more serious, but he was kind of a spaz.
Just let go.
What's that?
Technically Giovanni Vinci was also, and I was like, hey, but he just got let go the other day, so that doesn't count.
Yep. Doesn't anymore. Yep. And as was Cedric. So Tozawa and Dar both made it to the round of 8. Surprising at the time, maybe, certainly in Dar's case. Dar was not very good at the time, and I remember being very irritated that they were trying to shove him down my throat. And now I'm very irritated that he's injured, because he's very funny and he provides a lot of fun on the show. And Tozawa is a guy as funny as Tozawa. You can have him on your roster forever. Cruz del Toro, Raul Mendoza at the time. Yes. He was in NXT forever, and he lost like every singles match for the longest time. He was the Bobby Fish of his day, but yeah, there's him too. So I have fairly recently, like in the last 12 months, watched the Cruiserweight Classic again. So if it feels like I'm calling these up fairly easily, that's why, or at least some of the particulars. Where were you with the match?
Oh God, I don't remember. That was a long time ago.
JDC and Lexus King. We're off the rails. It's what we do.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was talking about. We kept talking about Noam Dar, and I don't even know. But no, I don't have much more to say about the match. I mean, it was it was a passable match. I'm with you with Lexus King. Like there's something there. There is something there with Lexus King. But he just needs to, I don't know what it is. He's just not connecting in the way that I think he needs to. I'm not sure if he, like you said, I don't know if he's ever going to be the star that they want him to be, but I could see him certainly being, I don't want to say the Miz, but maybe a couple notches below where the Miz is. I can't think of a good comparison there, but I could see them, kind of see WWE, putting the machine behind him a little bit, and him kind of having a nice run as a upper mid carder for a while.
All right, let us go to Zarya and Nikita Lyons, because it was brief. And I don't want to talk about Nikita Lyons for a long time. Early on in the show, Zarya and Sol Ruka had a scene with Nikita Lyons, who had not been on the show for weeks. I don't know if she's been dealing with another minor injury because she gets a lot of injuries, but
Well,
I think it's
did you
more because
notice? Did you notice Vic Joseph say something along the line, or I think it was Vic, it might have been Corey, but one of them say Nikita Lyons is back in her first match in a while, or something to those. I'm pretty sure I heard them say that, like they were
I
almost
missed it if it was said.
okay. I'm pretty sure something like that was said, almost like she was back after a small hiatus yet again, even though I saw her a month
Yeah.
ago in Lowell. I don't know.
And they put her in a match with Zarya, so I was like, well, she certainly doesn't have any chance to win this. So Zarya, who's been kind of fading to the background, probably as they realize Julia, Zarya, and Stephanie Vaquera can't all get pushed super hard at the same time, so they got to figure out a way to do that. So Julia and Stephanie weren't on this show at all, and
Well,
Zarya.
they were.
Well, yes, but not in a wrestling
Yeah,
context.
very, very minimal content.
Yeah, minimal. So Zarya flattens Nikita in 248. Nikita trying some stuff backstage, I guess. Being what she call herself, Big Cat Kita or something
Yeah.
like that. And I am just like, it's annoying, but she's a heel, so she's supposed to be. And I have to deal with the fact it's like I'm annoyed by everything she does because she's not good, but she is trying stuff as a heel. This is somebody who, when the cuts are being made, I look for her name just because even though they were high on her for reasons that I would love an explanation on, they are not anymore. She's not getting a lot of TV time, and when she does, she is getting beat. So anything on the Zarya and Nikita story? It seemed like she was doing something with Ashante the Adonis, but they were both on the show today and they didn't mention each other. So I don't know if that's on the back
Yeah,
burner or just literally just gone.
it feels like it's like on either on the back burner or they just went away from it. Because yeah, I mean, when I saw them when I went to NXT in Lowell, it was the second taping. Shanta the Adonis was in a match. She was at ringside for it. And now here we are, like a little bit more than a month later, and they're not even bringing it up. And there wasn't really even a good like blow off for her for that. Obviously, Carmen Petrovic and Ashante got together, but they never really went back to Nikita there. So I don't know. Talked about that longer than I expected. As far as the match goes, yeah, it was there. Zarya needed somebody to beat. Nikita is always a good person to beat, so I'm fine with that. Like you said, they can't be pushing Zarya, Stephanie and Julia all at the same time, kind of all in a similar position. So it is what it is. Somebody gets kind of left down the card a little bit, but I think Zarya is going to be just fine. She's got a great gimmick. She can definitely talk, and she delivers in the ring. She's got a great entrance. She's got some good music. It's Def Rebel is not always the greatest when it comes to music, and that's being nice. I'm gonna be nice. I'm actually kind of upset at Def Rebel for a lot of things, but that's besides the point. But I mean, she's got a great presentation. I think she's going to be just fine. You know, even if she's not getting that push now, she'll get it later.
Yeah, I showed up not to say anything, but as you were saying things about Def Rebel, I just nodded along with you.
Yeah, it was evident, very evident during the Royal Rumble, just how bad the entrance music is. I live for the Royal Rumble, as do you, and there were, I mean, I'd say 50%. And maybe that's conservative. Maybe it was a little bit lower than that, but maybe at least 50% of the people that came out, I had to actually wait until the camera showed them before I even knew who the hell was coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, wrestling fans, I mean, you people who are listening, spend time online with wrestling fans. We don't agree on much, but our thoughts on Def Rebel are pretty similar. So let's hang our hats on that. We can all agree on that. There is a reason, Nate, that I saved Bayley versus Cora Jade for last. It is because I actually liked it. This was the best match on the show.
It was the only passable match on the
10:38.
show. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was good.
10:38. Cora Jade wins. We talked about this last week. We knew what was going to happen here. We knew that Cora Jade was going to beat Bayley and she was going to be inserted into the match to make it 4-way. We didn't know that it was going to happen in such a stupid way. So Roxy coming out and taunting Bayley by wearing her old hugger uniform stuff, something more, I mean, not the same stuff because she's much smaller, but something, wearing the old things. We knew that was going to happen. That we knew that she was going to come out. We knew that Cora was going to win. But it was very weird booking in that she came out, clearly didn't want Cora to actually win because she knew that this was a probable outcome, that Cora would be added to the match. And yet she came out at a time to taunt Bayley that made it really obvious that Bayley would be able to get beat as a result. This was just so frustrating because they've been telling a pretty good story here with these women, and they had Roxy do something really stupid to get Cora Jade into the match. So all the work was good given the story, but the story was kind of dopey. So anyway, Bayley loses to Cora Jade. If you can't have a good match with Bayley, then hang it up. Cora Jade did, and she's not on Bayley's level, but she had a nice enough match. Ava shows up, makes it 4 for the show, and then they had a scene later with Bayley and Roxy and Ava and Cora, and it's the 4-way we predicted last week, Nate.
That it is. No, I think this is, like you said, definitely best match on the show. In terms of the work, I agree with you on the story. It was really cool to hear Bayley's old music again. Not gonna lie, it's very, I don't know. I guess kind of it sounds like kids' music or something like that, but still. I really liked the hugger character, and it was kind of nice just to hear that music, even if it was to taunt Bayley. I agree with Ryan Solario here in the chat that it made Roxanne look a little bit like an idiot. Kind of did. She comes out and I don't know exactly what she was thinking, because obviously this is how wrestling works. You come out, you make a distraction, and then somebody gets distracted and they lose, and that's kind of what happened here. And then she looked all like shocked at the when Cora got the win. It was a little weird. But whatever. It got us there. CJ in the chat, I saw an interview where Bayley says she plans on never bringing the hugger gimmick back, and that makes him sad. It kind of makes me sad too. I don't want to see her bring it back in the same capacity as it was originally. So I think that certainly had a ceiling, which I think is why they moved away from it. But almost like, and I think I said that, I might have even said this last week, but how John Cena, once in a while, he would bust out the Doctor of Thugonomics. Maybe it'd be kind of cool, like a little nostalgia thing for like one night. She busts out the hugger music and wacky waving inflatable arm filling tube men, also known as Bailey Buddies. Bailey Buddies. I said the hard one.
Killing it. I was going to say the same thing. You had no problem with the wacky one waving, that's supposed to give you problems.
Yep. And then Bailey Buddies, couldn't say that. Couldn't get that out. I'd be totally fine with that. But in terms of in terms of the story and or sorry, the Fatal 4-Way rather. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great match considering the 4 women involved. Bailey pulling kind of double duty with Elimination Chamber and in this Fatal 4-Way, coming up here soon. Obviously, Elimination Chamber a little ways out comparatively, but still, a couple big matches for her here, which is great. More Bailey, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So
Me
there we go.
too. I will just say it's weird that there is a main roster person who's visiting NXT who is not kicking tires. This is somebody who is successful currently on the main roster, and she's down here. And maybe it's different because Bailey has such a massive NXT pedigree. It's one of the big success stories you think about when you think about NXT, but it's interesting that where was I? Nate, I lost it.
Well, that's okay. While you try to find it, CJ asked us if it hurts Bailey to take an NXT loss. I'm going to say no because it's
no.
Bailey.
Yeah, she's bulletproof.
She's bulletproof, absolutely bulletproof at this point. She can certainly take a loss, and nobody's going to be thinking about it the next night or the next time she's out. She's down in NXT to put people over, and what to Kelly's point, something that you were just talking about, the fact that she's a main roster talent, a successful main roster talent, pulling double duty down in NXT. That says a lot to me. That says a lot about Bailey's character, or Pam's character, the actual person behind Bailey. She's down there to help. She's down there to put people over. She's down there to teach. She's down there to give people the rub. And that's actually, that's what she's doing. And she's not down there to do it half-assed. She's down there to, do it full-assed.
Yeah. I wonder what they tell people when they're going to do an NXT run. Do they say, no, you're going to do this and you're going to be back here? Did they tell that to the Good Brothers? You're going to do this, you're going to be back here. And then that never happened.
And then they got released.
Yes. A couple of times. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested to know what they tell to people who are going down there, because there's only the two reasons. There's tire kicking, and there's we don't have anything for you right now creatively, but you will be back there. So and I think the horsewomen have more reason to go down there than anyone. Gene Albert, this is going back. He said, Nikita is doing her best. Leave her alone. No, I'm not. No, her best is terrible. And I have to talk about that. She's awful, and she's been there a couple of years. So no. Okay. So,
and just because screw Vince Russo, that's what CJ said in the chat, and I agree. So there we go.
Yeah, sure.
Why not?
Evergreen comment. Okay. We're backstage now. Obafemi, A-Town Down Under. They did a scene. That's good. This, for me, could have been the main event segment, because the main event segment did not deserve to be it. So Oba talked a little bit, and A-Town talked a lot. And they suckered him in, attacked him. And they said the quiet part out loud. They said what the match would be. These guys both wanting to pin him, but they can't both pin him. We had Dr. Cohen. He said he allowed Javon Evans to have his match. And Evans said, yeah, there you see it, Ava, I can have my match. She made him sign a waiver that said WWE is not liable. That sounds very 1980s, 70s. But she said,
it sounds like it's unsanctioned.
Yeah,
but it's
right.
not.
An unsanctioned sanctions match. We'll give it time, but we won't sanction it. So there's that. Fatal Influence, Kalani, Jada, Adonis. That was the scene that was, hey, let's review our cast and get everybody on TV. And Trick Williams was on TV for right around 30 seconds. That's what you want from your biggest star on a go home show. So backstage stuff, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, really the only thing that I'll talk about, I guess, is going to be, A-Town Down and Obafemi. Everything else, I think, kind of speaks for itself, or at least from what I can think right now. But yeah, Obafemi, A-Town Down Under. This is going to be an interesting one. They kind of tease some dissension between them. They have been really teasing some issues between Austin Theory and Grayson Waller for a little bit now, and that obviously came to a head here tonight. In the segment that they had with Obafemi, they kind of teamed up to beat down Obafemi, but at the same time they were kind of going back and forth at one another verbally, and I think there might have been a couple physical shots there too. I don't remember. But I think once we actually get this in the ring, this should be interesting. I can see it as Obafemi pointed out earlier in the night. It's going to be a little bit more of like a handicap match, and I think it's going to be a handicap match to start. I think the two of them being Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, are going to work together to bring down Obafemi and kind of, I don't know, maybe chop the beast down, maybe work the legs or something like that, and kind of take him down. And then I think Obafemi is going to be down and out for a couple minutes, and the two of them are going to probably wind up going back and forth on one another as to who takes the next shot, who's going to actually pin Obafemi, and it's going to wind up devolving into a brawl between the two of them, which allows Obafemi to step in, beat the two of them up, and retain his title. That's kind of my prediction for how the match is going to go. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit some variation in there somewhere, but largely I have a feeling that's what we're going to wind up seeing, and I'm totally okay with that. And I think it's going to. I don't think it's going to lead to a breakup between A-Town Down Under. The two of them are so good together that the act is not stale at all. I think the two of them lift each other up, and they're the whole is greater than the sum of the parts at the moment. And I think if time ever comes where that is the other way around, sure, go ahead, break them up. But I think they're a great Weasley tag team. You could break them up, and I think they'd be completely fine on their own. But I think there's still some legs in this tag team. So I think they're gonna have this little spat for the title. But after Obafemi winds up winning, they're going to be like, oh, well, that sucked. We both lost, and they're going to move on and kiss and make up, for lack of a better term.
Not much other stuff. Eddie Thorpe made it official with the strap match, so we're going to get a strap match, but you don't bring a strap out unless there's going to be a strap match. That is Wrestling 101. So I said that many weeks ago, and now it's official. Andre Chase had a scene with Cale Dixon and Uriah Connors, and my big takeaway is, what does the worker Andre Chase think of the fact that he is now once again in a scene with total beginners, and I would have thought Duke Hudson was going to show up in this scene, except for the fact that I now know that he's not in the company anymore.
I was going to say, yeah, I'd be very surprised if he showed up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It'd be real shocking now. So they're committed to Andre, and I don't know. It's weird.
I am interested to see where this goes, because Andre Chase, he's lost, and there's obviously the MVP of Chase University is no longer in the company. So even if they do go back to like opening up Chase U, it's going to just be him, Thea Hale, maybe. Speaking of, where the hell's Thea Hale? We
Mm,
need Thea Hale. I want some Thea Hale on my screen.
yes, we do.
Um, but I kind of like this. You know that he's been off TV. He being Andre Chase been off TV for a little while now, and this is the second time we've got a little bit of a what Andre Chase is doing. Post Chase University, and I don't know. I want to see this flourish into something. I don't know what the story is going to be, but I'm here for it.
Ryan Solorio says, "You think this is going to turn Andre Chase into a party character?" No, but Andre Chase being around a couple of guys who are party characters might be pretty funny. Um, they could do stuff with him, trying to get them to be serious and buckle down, and all they want to do is party. It can be a little bit of a Rikishi too cool type of thing. If I'm just gonna pull one out, so yeah, I don't know. It seems like Chase University, as it was can't miss, but they must have thought that it was can't hit, so they let Duke Hudson go before he ever sniffed the main roster. So that is for me a bummer because they put him in a main event semi recently, and apparently they didn't like what they saw. I don't know. And Ryan says, and that will start a new Chase U. LOL. Yeah, I don't see what Andre Chase does if not this in a loop for the rest of his life. And if he's getting paid enough, then sure, do it. But if he's not, then why? I don't know, Nate. I believe I covered what is on the show.
I
I
think
didn't
so.
look for emails.
Oh yeah,
I
me
should do
either.
that
We should probably do that because
because we got one guy who almost certainly has sent us one. Stay sentences, and I will look for emails.
I
That'll
was
be
going to say
great.
we have two, but one of them's just spam.
Spam, I tells you. Kevin Catani says, "Salutations, gents. I hope this email finds you well, and doth my eyes deceive me? Ricky Starks in WWE already? That's a crazy fast turnaround, in my opinion. Where do you all stand on this? Here's where I stand. I was born in 1977, and I saw the entirety of the Monday Night Wars. I saw Rick Rude on both shows in the same night. So this is not as weird to me as it would be to some of you, but it's cool that this is happening now because a lot of people haven't seen anything like this."
My biggest takeaway from that is that you're 11 years older than me.
Shut up. Outside of this crazy reveal, I thought tonight was a solid episode, and I think Vengeance Day is shaping up nicely. Did you guys pop like I did when Roxanne came out as Hugger Bailey? I thought that was a really cool callback from a heel cocky enough to pull it off. Lastly, if you let your imagination run wild, what is the biggest surprise you think will come out of Saturday's event? I guess the biggest surprise available is the people that will be in the new faction from the test pattern. But
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know what to expect there. We could have talked about
they
that, but
didn't
we didn't.
they didn't show that tonight, did they?
They did, but it was at the very end, and it was mixed in with other Vengeance Day hype.
Oh, okay. I must have missed it. I don't remember seeing it.
Thanks as always. Go VIP and listen to AYB. Office hours are now over. The Professor Kevin P. Catani, PhD. Yeah, I will take a real strong stance against him saying that it was a solid episode because it was not. This was a weak one. They can't all be winners. I'm very rosy about this show, but I wasn't rosy about this week in particular.
Then I'll be Jamal.
Yeah. But Ricky was great. So there you go. And Ryan Solorio says, I think Ricky Starks feels more like Lex Luger showing up at the first episode of WCW Nitro. That was like 2 miles from my house. Not at the time, but it is now. I'm a Minnesota guy born and raised, and the Mall of America is the mall that I go to like 4 times a week. So yeah, that happened right here. That was so much bigger than this. This is very cool. But Luger was like, there were people in the company who didn't even know it had happened, and he was in a big spot in the company. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about 1995 while Nate says, I was 7. Don't ask me too much about that. There you go. That, I believe, is our show. I'm Kelly Wells. You can find me on Blue Sky at Other Kelly Wells. Nate, go ahead if you don't have anything more.
Nate Lindberg. You can check things I do out, natelindberg.com.
Cool. We will see you in, oh gosh, I don't know what's going to happen for this PLA because Nate and I are both not available. But
worst case scenario, and Kelly and I haven't talked about it, so maybe I shouldn't even say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Worst case scenario, we just cover it next week.
Yep. We will talk about it. That's what I'll tell you right now. Cheers, and we will see you when we see you.